Since its release in July, Gangnam Style by Psy has become known all over the world. Debuting at #1 in South Korea, the unsubtitled video on YouTube has now over 700 million views and people performing it in flash mobs, even at Penn. Because he didn't copyright it, his video has been remade in many parodies like Mitt Romney style and Obama style. Gangnam Style is going viral, got Psy a guest appearance on The Ellen Show and a surprise cameo at the VMAs. It is safe to say that Psy's Gangnam Style has infiltrated American culture.
But what is this song really about? In her article in The Guardian, marketing consultant Arwa Mahadwi writes that the song is a satire making fun of the consumerism of the Gangnam district of Seoul, an area defined by a nouveau-riche lifestyle. But most Americans don't speak Korean, so they don't understand the words, and it is the non-subtitled video that has gained the most attention. They apparently do not feel a need to understand the lyrics to watch the video in large numbers and be entertained.
Because we see the same tropes in Gangnam Style as in American music videos. As Korean actor Shin Hoon-jin describes, K-pop has marketed itself to American audiences by borrowing from the American music industry. We see lyrics similar to those in American songs, especially those in English. We also see the same images, like the singling out of one part of the female body to sexualize it. This cultural confluence could be part of why the video is popular. However, the popularity of American artists like Usher, Justin Timberlake, and Jason Derulo grew using their performances of masculinity by marketing of their sex appeal. Yet when Korean pop star Rain attempted to break the American market by aping these sexualized performances, he failed. Psy's video uses American tropes, but he does not attempt to perform American masculinity the way Rain tried to. Instead, as the Harvard Business Review also describes, Psy became popular because he was perceived as an other outside of American norms, through his Asianness and lack of conformity to an idealized American masculinity. And these two identities are linked. It is because Psy is Asian that he can present himself outside of this masculine norm, for the ways in which different ethnic and racial groups are perceived influences how their gender identity can be performed.
Historically, Asian men have been represented as emasculated in America. When Chinese men began immigrating to the U.S. in the mid-19th century, Americans created legislation limiting their occupations to feminized work such as laundry, cooking, and childcare. Even with the end of such legislation, American media has continued to propagate a feminized and desexualized image of Asian men. In the 1930s, this resulted in the popular series with benevolent detective Charlie Chan.
As Crystal Park examines in her work on Asian American writers, this stereotype still exists today. For example, Han in Two Broke Girls represents what Park calls the egghead wimp, a non-sexualized, non-threatening comedic figure calling to mind the black buddy figure Hill Collins described for African American men. Even Leslie Chow in The Hangover, though a forceful character, is feminized by his name and high voice. The gender transgressive behaviors presented in Gangnam Style, especially the sauna and elevator scenes, become comical to an American audience through this historical association of Asian men as figures of fun, not sexually desirable objects. But how would this scene be viewed if the performer was not Asian?
The influence of racial identity on gender identity applies also to African Americans. Historically, as Park describes, black men were classified as primitive and barbaric, translating to the hyper-heterosexual image Hill Collins writes they feel constrained to perform even today. She writes that black men in perpetual pursuit of booty calls may appear to be the most authentically black. Their hyper-heterosexuality as represented in the physical body becomes linked to their blackness. This contrasts with a current stereotype for Asian men that Park describes, the rice boy. As young, attractive professionals with access to material symbols of socioeconomic status, the rice boy is an Asian man made more masculine by exterior symbols of consumerism and wealth, like Leslie Chow, whose gangster attitude is linked to his money. However, this still leaves Asian men inherently feminized. Without these symbols, they are still just figures of fun. By satirizing consumer culture, Psy satirizes this link between heterosexuality and status.
As Simone de Beauvoir describes, no group sets itself up as dominant without creating a contrasting other. As white men have been dominant in America, this has othered black men and Asian men. Joan Nagel writes that ethnicity is performed. Black men acting hyper-heterosexual or Asian men displaying their social mobility exemplifies this. It creates ethnic boundaries which reinforces their otherness. This otherness has also represented the performance of black and Asian men's masculinities as inferior to dominant white heterosexual
Lastly, this dominant masculinity legitimizes heterosexuality as a part of the masculine norm. An image of two white or black men performing gender transgressive behaviors must be repudiated, as this leads to the assumption that they are gay and thus less masculine. However, Psy's already feminized Asian identity allows him to act outside the heterosexual norm without stepping outside his masculine identity. By playing blatantly with his gender performance, Psy suggests that one can take agency over one's otherness. Instead of letting it be viewed as inferior, it can be freeing to perform a masculinity not limited by the white standard. Most American viewers, viewing Psy as an other, accept his portrayal of masculinity as humorous and non-threatening. But for the Americans that recognize a critique of their narrow visions of masculinity in the video, Psy's Gangnam Style could help them expand what it means to be a man.
Oppan Gangnam Style.